What's up, guys, and welcome back to ATEM Off-Road. Today we're going to be doing a Clockspring replacement on this 1997 Jeep Wrangler Tj. Everything's been pretty much narrowed down to Clockspring in the steering wheel. We have an airbag light on the dash and the horn's not working. And we'll begin the process to remove the steering wheel to replace that Clockspring. So guys, I'm going to start up the vehicle and show you that the airbag light is on. Doesn't go out, and we also have no horn function. So these are the symptoms of a bad Clockspring. Make sure that the steering wheel is in the forward position. Before I go ahead and start pulling the steering wheel off, we're gonna have to disconnect the battery terminals. So now that the battery terminals have been disconnected, we're gonna go ahead and move back into the Jeep. In order to remove the horn plate, there's going to be two 8mm bolts behind the steering wheel. Let's go ahead and remove those with an 8mm socket wrench. So it's going to come off just like this, and behind there is going to be two wires. So we're going to go ahead and remove those. This one here easily just disconnects, and this one here, you can just wiggle that one right off like so, and then you can detach the airbag horn switch from the steering wheel. So this kit here you can rent for about 20 bucks at AutoZone. We're going to set it up to remove the steering wheel. We're going to use these two bolts and these two washers and this piece here. So I'll go ahead and set that up and show you how it's going to be removed. So now we have the steering wheel ready to go. We're going to remove this nut here on the steering wheel shaft. It's going to be a 21mm nut. I'm going to use this impact and a 21mm socket, and we're just going to go ahead and buzz that off. Like so. But let's set up this puller now. So when you're ready to pull the steering wheel off, your puller setup is going to be like this. You're going to find your two bolts and then the center bolt in the puller. And you are going to add this piece to the puller as well to protect the end of the shaft. But I'm going to go ahead and thread in these two bolts like so. And I'm going to thread the two outer bolts evenly. And then I'm going to snug up this middle bolt up against the steering wheel shaft. And what's going to happen is as I run this bolt clockwise into this threaded puller, it's going to pull the steering wheel off of the shaft. I'm using a 5/8 wrench, and I'm just going to hold the steering wheel until this thing comes off. And you might get a popping noise. That's okay. That's just letting you know that the steering wheel has been removed. This one came right off. And I'm just going to disconnect these bolts and set the puller off to the side and remove the steering wheel. The cabling is in this slot right here. You don't want to damage your cabling. You just want to pull that out, and your steering wheel has just been removed. You want to insert the ignition key into the ignition and roll the key in the forward position. And then there's a hole right here underneath the column where you're going to push up and out, and that will release the key cylinder out from the ignition column. So we're going to set that off to the side, leave these two together. We'll go in with a screwdriver and remove these two bolts, or screws if you will. And they're going to fall, hit the ground. That's okay. We'll pick those up later. So our bottom piece will disconnect like so from the bottom of the column, and then our top piece will come right off the top like so from the column. You just want to double check that this doesn't move in its orientation, and you want to match everything up to this column with the new Clockspring. So first thing I'm going to do is kind of wiggle this off. See how it's just coming off, and it should free from the column. So I had to like push up and out, and the bottom up and out, and just kind of wiggle it out until it frees up. There's going to be two connectors. We'll go ahead and remove the yellow connector and this connector. There's a tab. I'll have to release the tab. And our old Clockspring has now been removed. So we're gonna go ahead and install the new Clockspring. It's going to be a pretty simple installation, and we'll just basically repeat the same steps as we removed the old Clockspring. So I'm going to take some anti-seize. You can buy this, it's real cheap for about $1 at AutoZone. Get some of this and add it to your shaft. So I'm going to add some to the threads and then some to the splines. And I'm just going to coat the splines real nice. That way our steering wheel doesn't ever rust to the shaft. Now just keep in mind that the shaft is it's a one fit only. So the steering wheel fits only one way on the shaft. So you'll see, if you look closely to the shaft, you'll see a wider slotted area. You want to line those slots up with the steering wheel to the shaft, and then it should just go right back on. So I'm going to go ahead and install this Clockspring, and we will basically repeat the same steps. So there's 2 tabs here, if you can see them. Those are going to hook on, and we're going to connect our connectors. And we just want to make sure that these 2 tabs are in the center with this like half moon, and it comes off. The old, just like the old one came off, the new one has to go back on. So I'm going to go ahead and just take my connectors, snap those in position, and you want to hear the click. And then I'm going to snap this one in position, and that's connected. Then I'm going to go ahead and place the Clockspring over the shaft, and you see this hole right here and this notch here. That's where those 2 tabs are going to click into. All right, very carefully, and we're going to push that and let it click into position, and then just straighten our switch here. It's like a slip switch. So now that that's all connected, you might want to double check that all your connections are connected. And since we're here, we can also check all the other connections behind the column too, and just making sure that those are tight and they don't wiggle loose, because it is known that these connectors in the back will wiggle loose and you'll lose your turn signals. So all mine look pretty tight, and so I'm just going to continue the process. So you want to locate your plastic column, and we'll go ahead and just set that on in here. Like so. Slips on just like that. And then we'll take the bottom one, add our bolts to secure the plastics together over the column. Okay guys, now the fun part. We're going to put the steering wheel back onto the shaft, and we got to make sure that the electrical connectors slip through the hole of the spline shaft here. And again, making sure that the plastic piece is straight up and down at the 12 o'clock position. And we're going to go ahead and install the steering wheel. And like I was saying, there's only one way to put it on. So I'm going to go ahead and add this nut, hand tight, and I'm going to put my ear protection on because I don't like the sound of that impact. But I'm going to go ahead and torque this nut down. So the torque setting is going to be right here for that nut. Once it's torqued, I'm just checking to make sure that white piece that turns the slip ring and that contact switch is making connection with the steering wheel. I can look between the steering wheel and the column, and it's definitely engaging into the steering wheel. So the next thing we're going to do is install the airbag. So we're just going to go ahead and line it up with the connection, and just make sure that connection snaps in place. Very good. And both the connections look pretty solid. So I'm going to go ahead and set the airbag into the steering wheel. Take my 8mm bolts, and I'm just going to use my socket setup to tighten this by hand. Your ignition cylinder, let's go ahead and install that. You just want to line it up with this notch and the slot in the column. So install is pretty simple. You just want to set it in and then roll the key back to the off position and pull your key out. So we're going to reconnect this battery. Okay guys, so we're in the driver's seat. We're going to go ahead and run some tests on this Clockspring and just double check everything's working properly. And I'm going to start it up. It might hesitate a little bit because we disconnected the battery. So I'm just going to go ahead and give the steering wheel a full clockwise and counterclockwise turn. Center my wheels and then check the horn. Horn working good, excellent. So now our horn works and we have no airbag light on the dash. Charlie and I had a lot of fun doing this project, and we hope you guys like it. So if you like it, hit the thumbs up and consider subscribing, helps out the channel. Check out some other videos that may be helpful to you, and as always, have a nice day and we'll see you on the next video, guys. Take care and peace.